Thank you, Lord Monckton. And yes, we're a little bit behind on schedule, so we appreciate all the comments. And Lord Monckton, I think even before the questions came in, you had the answers. That's just the brilliance of your talk here. One particular point that was made by Lord Monckton regarding glacial isostatic adjustment, and this is one of my favorite humorous illustrations of what we're up against as far as the tactics of climate alarmists and how they try to manipulate data and arguments to fit their narrative rather than real world facts. So, glacial isostatic adjustment. How is this part of the global warming debate? Well, basically it's this. All of the predictions of dramatic sea level rise have not come true. What we see is that there's been little or no acceleration of sea level rise. The seas have been rising at about the same pace since at least the mid-1800s. But that's very inconvenient for folks who want to tell you there's a climate crisis, especially when so many of their predictions are about the seas rising and inundating whole cities. We saw this in Al Gore's movie, An Inconvenient Truth, in which we saw Miami and New York flooded with seawater, and yet, again, we don't see any increase in sea level rise. So, the folks who would like you to believe there is such a sea level rise take a look at that and say, well, why aren't the seas rising as rapidly as we predicted? Well, the reason that they have focused on is this. They say that much of the sea level rise that they predict is from ice melt that is currently on land masses. So whether it's Greenland, whether it's alpine glaciers in more temperate latitudes, whether it's more polar latitudes, the ice that simply exists throughout time there. They say that, well, as the ice has melted and would otherwise be contributing to sea level rise, the land is rebounding. The weight of that ice is no longer on the land masses, so the land mass is actually rising without the weight of the ice mass keeping it down. So if not for that rebounding of land masses, then we would see more sea level rise. And so they say, well, wait a second. So let's adjust for that. Let's estimate how much the land is rising due to the lack of ice keeping it down, and we'll add that to sea level. The problem is this. You're telling us that we're going to have a sea level crisis, not because there's more volume of water in the oceans, but because the relative level of the sea to land is going to change and inundate land. Glacial isostatic adjustment works against that narrative. So they pretend it doesn't exist. Well, let's just pretend glacial isostatic adjustment doesn't exist. So what we're going to tell you is the volume of the oceans rather than what the seas actually are. Anyway, I digress, but there's an illustration. Lord Monckton touched upon it, but this is what we're up against when folks are claiming climate crisis for facts that simply do not exist. Even when they're proven not to exist, then they adjust the way they compute things.